Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Firewalls Don't Stop Dragons. I am your host, Kerry Parker. Today we have episode 438 for July 21st, 2025. And we have got a really interesting interview for you today. This is unlike after 438 shows, I don't think I have done another interview quite like this one. It's a lot of fun. And my guest is also very interesting and very entertaining. His name is, well, not his given name, but the name he goes by now, his hacker handle, I guess. His sobriquet, if you will, is Deviant Ollam. And I met him, well, I've seen him give talks at various hacker conferences that I've been to. And I managed to get hooked up with him through one of my hacker friends who runs KakalakiCon. And for the subject of our interview, I ran across one of his presentations that I did not get to see live, but thankfully a lot of the presentations he's given over the years have been recorded and posted online, that he titled Lawyer, Passport, Locksmith, Gun. And it was basically a compelling litany of reasons why you should strongly consider having those things or those relationships established before you need them. And I thought it was a really interesting idea, and I've really kind of personally been interested in this notion of being prepared. And that can lead to the prepper mindset, which is a different thing, but it's similar in that I think it's interesting to be ready for all the weird things that life can throw at you. And then for me, as a software engineer, being ready for things in kind of a digital way. Now, Deviant actually is a physical penetration security expert. We call these pen testers. Software pen testers are hired to find flaws in software, usually stuff that's on the internet, because that's things that can be attacked remotely. There are hardware penetration testers as well, and they try to hack physical hardware. But Deviant's job is to look for flaws in things like locks and safes and help companies remediate any problems that he finds. And this can even take the form of being hired by a company to infiltrate a building and secure storage within the site. Like, companies pay him money to try to break into certain facilities and find flaws in their security setup. So why are we talking about this on this show? Well, Deviant's experience has led him to understand the value of being prepared. Planning for situations where not being prepared can really leave you in a bad position. So we're going to kind of talk today about being prepared, and in ways that, many of you, I'm guessing, have probably never really considered. So we're going to talk about some of the things he talked about in his talk, which is the value of having a passport, whether you think you're going to need one or not, and establishing a relationship ahead of time before you need it with a lawyer, and yes, even a locksmith. Now, we're not going to talk about the gun part. If that's something you find interesting or intriguing, you may want to watch his talk on this, which there's a link in the show notes. And it's quite good. I recommend, regardless, I recommend you watch it when you get a chance. But we're going to focus on those. And then we're also going to talk about things like, of course, when I have this kind of a person with this kind of experience on the show, I've got to ask them, like, what padlocks do you recommend? What home locks do you recommend? We talk about, are the safes that you find in a hotel room, are they actually secure? I even ask him about, because I just think this is fascinating, all the movies that show people cracking safes or picking locks, do they portray that properly? Which ones get it right? Because he does this for a living. And we talk about so much more. So it's a really fascinating discussion. Again, unlike, I think, any other interview I've done. So I'm really hoping you enjoy this. One last caveat before we start, there is some swearing in this. Just FYI, there's your trigger warning. But I think it's perfectly appropriate for this talk. So with that as your setup, let's get to my interview with Deviant. In addition to being a physical entry specialist and penetration tester, Deviant is also a certified safe technician and vault inspector, a member of the International Association of Investigative Locksmiths, a life safety and ADA consultant, and an NFPA fire door inspector. That's a lot to say. Welcome to the show, Deviant.
Thank you very much for having me. I assure you, most of those credentials sound impressive, but I got half of them just because I wanted to explain why I would be in a building that I was breaking into. So, I'm here to check your doors. You can back that up with some gravitas. You say, yeah, look, here's my little cert. I'm totally not breaking in.
So the construction hat, the orange vest, and the clipboard was sometimes you need a little more.
Absolutely. You got to talk the talk. And it's fascinating. Right. It's one of my favorite presentations, which is me talking about fire code for hours, and people were enraptured. And I loved it because I'll nerd out about weird topics like that. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. One of the ones I saw you give was about the implanting ARFIDs in your body, which we're not talking about today, but that was just fascinating as well. So 100%. I got to say also, you said in your limited spare time, you enjoy loud moments with lead acceleration and quiet times with podcasts. And you arrive at airports too early, show up at parties too late, but will promptly appear on the right time at the right time for tacos and whiskey. I can appreciate all of that, actually.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I like the pew pew and the hush hush.
So I happened to catch a presentation you gave, not in person, unfortunately, but one online. I think you did a couple of years ago at some con. I forget which one it was. You got to give a talk called Lawyer, Passport, Locksmith, Gun, a talk about risk and preparedness. And this has been kind of a weird niche interest of mine for a long time. And I've been trying to, I don't call myself a prepper, but I still have this fascination with being ready for things. I don't know how else to put it. Prepping just has maybe has a weird connotation these days, but it was a great talk and it was very informative, and it resonated with me. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that today and kind of general about preparedness and risk assessment in general. So before we get into people, my audience has got to be dying to know I've done talks with hardware hackers. I've done talk with software hackers, never a physical penetration specialist. So tell us what it is, what does that mean? What do you do? And then how you got into that line of work.
Yeah, so the sort of business speak version of what my colleagues and I do would be adversarial emulation, on-site physical testing. The flashy way that my wife says it is, well, he's a criminal, mastermind. He's professionally dangerous, right? It is showing people where the gaps might be in their security. In my profession, that's physical security principally, and doing so sometimes with a bit of flourish and panache. Because really delivering that news, there are some people you can walk through a building, and many times we do walk through a building, and we'll point at things. Well, so this door, the direction of that's swinging, I don't think those hinges are going to be protected against this or that. You say, okay, now this hallway down here, you don't have a lot of camera coverage here, or say, oh, no, you keep your records in this office, but now when did you first set that? How many people have the combination? That versus taking a meeting where you say, hey, nice to meet you. How's it going? Lovely building. We broke in here sometime last week. You didn't know. Let's take a walk. And you say, so this door needs some adjustment. You can look on your security cameras. You'll see me slipping it. This camera is not pointed down this hallway. You'll see me disappear for 2 hours. You don't know what I was doing. No, this was your office, right? You're the financial officer. Can you open your safe? And they do. And you go, that's my business card. That shouldn't be in there. So yeah, we break into buildings to show people how they can avoid someone breaking into their building.
And how much of that is commercial versus, let's say, government?
It's a mix. More commercial than government by far. We work with a lot of government teams. They are principally the ones that are a little closer to the vest, and they want their people doing the actual break-in testing. So we train a ton of government. We train more government than we break into. But we have clients from the public and private sectors, both for our break-in work, for our classroom work, and everything in between.
All right. That is fascinating. I'm sure you've got amazing stories to tell. Maybe we'll get to a couple today.
Sure.
But let's talk about risk and preparedness. Before we get into some of the specifics, I want to talk about the whole kind of prepper ethos. And that is, you don't have to be a doomsday believer to be a prepper, right? I mean, the Boy Scouts motto is be prepared, so it doesn't have to be this tinfoil hat, black helicopter kind of thing. But how do you define this mindset? And as humans, how do we determine what our risks are and what we should prepare for? Because we're dead to be bad at that.
Yeah, I love that you point that out right out of the gate, because the fact that humans are really bad at risk analysis skips us. What is it they say? 70 or 80% of drivers think they're a good driver. Well, clearly on a bell curve, not everyone can be at the top 80th percentile, right?
Right.
So humans generally think this one bad thing that is always on my mind that everyone's talking about these days. And we're all busy. We prepare for the wrong things and we prepare in the wrong ways. You have limited time, you have limited money. So you say, well, if I just find the least expensive, most efficient costing widget, And I put that in my other bag that I've been adding a few more. I added my power cord to it. I added my this, and I got my cellular radio. I'm going to add this thing I just saw somebody on Instagram mention. I'm going to put that in my bag. And if someone said, hey, look, you go to your doctor and they say, look, so you want to live longer. Your parents, one of them had heart disease. You have a sedentary lifestyle. We talk about the diet. So yeah, there's some changes you could make. And it's going to be kind of an everyday practice to make sure that you're trying to get out a little bit. You're trying to be mindful of what you're check labels when you buy in the grocery store. Most people don't want that. They're like, I'm tired. I'm busy. My kids need this. I got to go can't I just, buy an exercise elliptical machine and leave it in the corner of the guest room and never
take a pill.
Right. So people like the idea of solving a solution so it's done and it's not in their cognitive load. I bought the thing, I paid the money for that thing that I saw, so I'm good. And unfortunately, that's not really, preparation is a practice, not a purchase. And
I like that. Yeah.
Thinking about what risks do I really face, and that talk of which you described, a lot of it was it's about mundane everyday problems. Your car needs a jump start. Well, did you think of the fix for that? Actually, it's like literally a purchase at the local Pep Boys, like get a little jump box thing.
Yeah.
But that $28 jump box, if you don't have it and it's 2 a.m. in a winter parking lot somewhere, and you're like, oh crap, what would I pay to have bought that jump box? But other things such as having a lawyer, having done life planning documents. I talk about if your loved one has a medical emergency, if maybe you have a child who's going to school and they're overseas for a semester. A lot of people, I don't even have passports.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we live in a connect. How did you not have a passport? Someone might need you for some crisis and they say, look, I got picked up by the Gardai in a bar fight and I think my lawyer is talking with the State Department, but I got a hotel room full of all my stuff that they're going to throw in the street. Can you get to Rome and get my stuff and then connect with the State Department over here? If you don't have a passport, you say, well, you should have had your bar fight in 31 days because I'm going to send in that passport form right away for you.
Right. A lot of the traditional scenarios when people think about preparing often revolve around natural disasters or things that can happen because of a natural disaster. Fires, hurricanes, power outages. You can find plenty of online resources for these, and a lot of them skip over the why part. Like they just focus on what to do. There's a checklist of things to do or buy, but there's not a lot of discussion about the strategy or the thinking behind them. Again, the why part. So what are some common mistakes or misconceptions relating to disaster prep? And then a lot of things are not disasters. They're unnatural disasters. How should we consider prepping for those?
The number one failing that I see in a lot of thinking and planning is, and I don't think it sounds like certainly not your mentality, and I'm doubting it's many of your listeners' mentality, but in the broader sort of classic prepper community, the grizzled guy kind of prepper community who has his guns and his bunker full of beans, that bunker mentality is the biggest right out of the gate baseline error that a lot of people have made historically. They say, well, I got mine, and I got all the rifles and the bullets and the cans of goods and the rice, so I'm going to be set. And when in fact, most people like me, a younger generation, very, very egalitarian, very anarchistic, very community driven, it's I have X many shotguns and rifles and this much ammo, because the moment of the disaster, I'm going to distribute that to my network of people. I'm going to make sure my neighbor, my neighbor has an extra battery to charge, like a battery bank I can charge the phones, but you actually don't have, your cousin was in town with you? So you only have one rifle in the whole house? Jesus Christ, take a fucking rifle. I'm going to say, I have all this stuff for others. And in fact, if you look at a lot of natural disasters, that's what we see, except at the very elite, highest echelons, socioeconomically speaking. There is very much a panic mode for the people who are way at the top, and they often have less connection with their neighbors.
Zuckerberg owns half of Hawaii or something.
Yeah,
right?
He's going to jet set off to Hawaii and bunker down. But most people, from the middle class all the way down to the lowest working class, least among us in terms of economic and privilege, they all drop all that. And everyone is clearing brush out of roads, chainsawing trees, making sure, hey, can I put some tarp up over the side of your window? This tree caved in your side of your house here. Does your dog have enough water? Do you need pet food? Everyone's coming together. and you're not hunkered down. You're actually, how quickly can I be in touch with the people around me in a disaster, as opposed to avoiding all the people around me. That's right off the bat, the number one skewed thinking that I see.
Well, and also, it's something else I picked up when I was getting my ham radio license. I think it was around that time. Something somebody said was, in a natural disaster, you also want to do your best to not be a burden to the first responders, right? You don't want to have them come to you because you don't have a flashlight or you don't have some of the basics, right? So some of the prepping it is for yourself, but it's also to make sure that you're not a burden on the other people so they can handle the people that really need it.
Yeah. Can you self-treat? Can you self-rescue, et cetera? Yeah, absolutely. Which is such an act of care to your neighbors to do that.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So I want to go through, I'm not going to go through the whole presentation, and I'll put a link in the show notes. People can go watch it. I encourage them to do so. But let's talk about a few key takeaways. So you already mentioned passport. I want to talk about some other scenarios when you might want to have a passport in hand, because I looked up some numbers on this, and despite like the travel changes that you used to be able to go to Canada just by walking across the border. I think a driver's license was enough, and that's not true anymore. So those kind of situations, like when you've got a neighboring country that we share a huge border with, you know, that might have caused some people to get a passport, but still, I think only 48% of Americans have a valid passport. I think that's horrible.
Yeah. It's really wild to me.
So why should they go out and get the passport? Give me some other reasons why it inspire people.
Sure, we could start from the most mundane to the more inspired. For one thing, having ID, as much as, again, many of us who are strongly believe in certain civil liberties and have questioned our authorities around us don't like it, but ID drives our world. It's hard to do stuff, whether you're dealing with the government and trying to get on a plane, or whether you're just trying to get a hotel or make certain trips. Like having an ID, being asked to show ID, is something that we do more and more in this world. And if you only have one ID, like a lot of people just have a driver's license. Maybe you've got some expired student card from a college if you were young enough. Maybe you have some affinity like AARP card or sort of retiree pension card if you're old enough. But a lot of people out there have one ID, and it's probably a driver's license. And if that ID is lost, instantly, you just screw up a lot of your day-to-day life. So I've had people who, you know, where are we going to lunch today? And everyone says, okay, we're going to go to the place that we always go. And so it's like, no, we can't go to Molly's. No, because they have the 21 policy. And, you know, Sam, they lost their wallet they haven't gotten anything yet. You're like, oh, shit. Like just little things. People can't sit with you at lunch or get on a plane if you have to travel. Maybe your ID isn't real ID compliant. So maybe that's another good reason to have a unquestionable ID. A passport has a greater cachet, but maybe you actually do need to get out of the country for, maybe start with pleasure. What if you have a friend who said, hey, I just won an amazing contest, and it turns out at work I had the sales numbers. I'm going to Cabo, or I'm going to Iceland, or you name it. It's a house with 8 people, and you're one of my top 8 friends, and you have to turn that down? Just say no because you don't have a passport? What's wrong with you? And also the real one, though, is you never know we live in an interconnected world. You never know what might cause you to have to jump across the border, whether for your safety or convenience or the safety and something going on with a loved one. You might have somebody who you know who is distressed in another area and needs you for a minute. And if you can do that, if you can show up for them, that's huge.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of people, I think, when they think of passports, think of the old style passport book, which is something, like, I don't want to have to carry that dumb thing around. Like, it doesn't even fit in my wallet. You can, of course, and though a lot of people may not know, you can get a passport card as well. In fact, I recommend you get both. And one of the cool things about that from a privacy perspective is that the passport card has actually less information on it about you than your driver's license.
Oh, a lot. I love that you mentioned that. Yeah. So there are places, as we say, I don't like showing my ID, but there are places that they ask you to. You know, you're going to this gun range. You got to, again, going to just a bar. And many places used to just kind of look at it and put it away. But everyone's now using their customer management system. They're all scanning to get everyone's data. And a passport card literally is your name and your birth date and the fact that you're from this country, if you're an American passport card, and nothing else. And no zip codes, no home address, no phone numbers, no eye color. I guess it might be eye color on a passport. But yeah, it's the least amount of information possible. And I like that very much.
Yeah, I do too. And I'm kicking myself because I just redid my passport. And I was in a hurry and I didn't check the box for getting both. So I'm gonna have to go back and get the other one, but I can do it.
Yeah.
But I need to do that. And I absolutely will.
Yeah,
be
it's
doing
only
that,
what, an extra $30-$40 when you're doing the
it's really
passport
not much.
book?
Yeah. The dumb thing is, though, I think you have to do it through the renewal process, which would mean I'd have to send in my existing passport and have them sit on it until I get both back, which is just dumb.
Which is a mess right now. Right now, passports
and it is a mess. And I've got 2 international trips coming up, so I can't do it right away, but I will eventually do that. I'm just kicking myself for I can't believe I didn't check that damn box when I got it renewed.
Next time, 10 years from
Next time. And that's why a public service to the audience, right? Don't do what I did. Okay, one of the other things that was in your talk that I think is good to talk about is lawyers. And, most people seek out a lawyer, after the need arises, like, oh crap, I'm in trouble. I need a lawyer. Who do I call? So why should I pre-establish a relationship with a lawyer? And there's lots of types of lawyers. Which one should I have in my contact list?
Absolutely. And you're hitting it right on the head, where when you need, the theme of this whole talk was when you need one of these things, a lawyer, a passport, a locksmith, or a gun, if you say, man, I need this, it's probably because you're in a heightened stress state. Something is going on that has unexpectedly crashed into your life. And we don't make good, it's why you take a friend with you if you have a loved one who died and you're shopping for coffins or death care or any kind of services. Because you're emotionally involved, you're not in the best clear-headed state. So before that happens, again, I'm a big advocate of getting a lawyer. And lawyers are a cost. Everyone's mindful of their dimes these days and their nickels. Like, I get it. And we've had plenty of friends who might tell you, oh man, I got this subpoena for this thing. It's a civil matter. Somebody slipped and fell on my sidewalk. Or, oh yeah, I've got to go into court because such and such with that business deal. Or heaven forfend that it's a criminal matter where, somebody's accusing me of stalking them, but they're actually there my crazy ex. And I'm just going to go into court and try to clear it up. And you'll ask your friend, do you have a lawyer? I don't want to spend money on a lawyer. Like, oh my God, spend money on a lawyer.
Yeah.
And it's not fair that the system works this way. But again, judges give deference to lawyers. That the process is, I've never spent bad money on education, travel, or a lawyer. It's one of the purchases that you come away far better off financially than you would have if you didn't spend the money. It means you have to have the money for it. I get it. If you're not making rent and I say, just pay a lawyer a couple $100 for an hour of their time, you might think I'm crazy. But having that lawyer and being able to, as you're getting to your question, evaluating the need and building the relationship before you're stressed makes you much more likely to make the judgment call. You might even have a lawyer that you send an email to. You say, hey, Frank, should you be involved in this? I'm going to show up to this negotiation. And Frank might say, yeah, well, I mean, it's just a document signing. Let me look at the document. This is pretty normal. No, there's no landmines in this, man. Call me. I'll stay near my phone that day. But you're probably good. You say, all right, what do I owe you? It's like, no, you're a good cut. You're fine. You're good. I took 2 minutes. That's fine. A lot of times, if you have an established lawyer, a 5-minute phone call is just kind of, you're fine. Try to get a lawyer out of the blue. You say, I've got a hearing in 45 minutes and I'm not prepared. You're going to pay far more than $3.99 for that lawyer. And the question of what lawyer do I need? Again, it gets into risks. It gets into what are your do you spend a lot of time in shady places with shady people? Are you likely to get picked up by the authorities for something you're doing? Whether you're a penetration tester and you're suspected of breaking into a building, or maybe you're an actual criminal who does break into buildings. And you're like, yeah, man, I'm not dumb. I'm a criminal, but I'm not dumb. We're going to have a lawyer on the standby. But most people are probably going to need a lawyer for either traffic matters, and those can be minor. They can be, hey, I got dragged into court over this vehicle registration, or they could be, hey, I got pulled over and I was accused of being drunk, but I wasn't. But they said that I failed the field sobriety test, which those tests, people know those are all, you will not pass. The horizontal gaze nystagmus or the one-legged stand or the modified rhombus, like all of these are like, they're designed to make you fail. So you don't take those tests. You always refuse and you say, I'll blow right now if you want to. You can't refuse the blow test. But like maybe you haven't had anything to drink, but they swear you have and you're getting dragged in and then your car got towed and then you want a lawyer that you have a relationship with for that kind of matter. What if you have a contentious home life. You might want a lawyer from family court. And you say, look, we have a good parenting agreement. My divorce was no fault, but I'm just really, things have been acrimonious and the kids are getting older and we're worried about schooling. And maybe you have that conversation before you need to have that conversation out of urgency.
Right.
So your own life will dictate what you need. But in general, a general practice attorney can be found in sort of two ways, and they're related to this talk. One, again, the most common citizen authority interaction is traffic related, road related.
Mm-hmm.
Go to traffic court. Traffic court is open in almost every town. Go to traffic court one night, or nowadays, sometimes even on Zoom. See if you can look up and find a Zoom session.
Yeah.
And the few people there, many people there will be pro se, and they're just sort of self-representing and hope that the cop doesn't show up and they get out of a speeding ticket.
Right.
But some people there are facing real problems, facing real points, maybe jail time, and they're going to have a lawyer. You'll see the same lawyer represent, in a small town especially, representing the same 3 or 4 clients that night. Get that lawyer's contact information. Clearly they're doing something right. If you like how they're talking, if they look good, you say, hi, you walk up, do you have a card? What is your practice in? So you can at least say, yeah, well, I saw this guy. His name is Ross. He seemed like he could put 2 sentences together. That's one avenue. Or if you say, no, I'm probably not likely to be dragged into court by the authorities anytime soon, what you probably want is a family planning attorney. If you don't already have a will, if you don't already have a living will for advanced medical directives, if you don't have anything to speak of your wishes in the event of medical disaster for yourself, that's a conversation. And it's a super fast conversation. It's a wonderful peace of mind, setting up what are called powers of attorney or medical powers of attorney. If you are in any way, maybe you're in your 20s, your 30s, you have a close relationship with a partner, but you're not married yet. Do you think that partner would advocate for your wishes better than your blood family might? Maybe this is a huge problem in the queer community, right? In the trans community. They say, I'm not married, but my parents would do this for me and I would hate that. I would say, well, pick somebody else in your life. It's like a 45-minute conversation for under $100. And you get an attorney that you then not only get some documents, you have that relationship.
Yeah.
And many times the attorney that you have the relationship with isn't the attorney you need in the next crisis, but they're the attorney that will get you the next attorney.
Right.
You get hauled into jail for a bar fight or a suspected, you burned that building down. You're like, no, it wasn't me. Eyewitness testimony is mistaken. Your family law attorney who did your will probably isn't going to defend you in court from a false charge of arson. But you can say, this is my lawyer. I have their card. I have their number. You call their office and they say, you shut the F up. I'm going to call my professional. I know you're going to get a call from Sam. You're going to get a call from Chris. They're good people.
Yeah. And those are the kind of things, man, if you don't have that ahead of time, you are so screwed, especially some of the things like having to do with power of attorney or estate stuff, because if you don't get those done before someone is incapacitated or dead, you could be looking at horrible, horrible problems. Yeah.
And it's not just for you. It is for your loved ones. We talked about, this is natural disaster. You don't want to be the neighbor that is causing other neighbors that you care about to lose resources or attention. In your circle of loved ones and friends, you don't want to be you'll be the one in a coma or you're in a coffin. It's no skin off your ass. You have left behind devastating heartache and trouble and tons of stress for your loved ones if you didn't take the 45-minute meeting and get a couple of pieces of paper set up in advance.
So I always, when my daughters are growing up, I always told them that there's certain relationships that they wanted to nurture ahead of time. And some of these are getting harder to do. Like I used to try to know a banker at my local branch, somebody I could walk in who knew me by face and could greet me without having to produce an ID. And hey, I saw this weird charge. Could you check this out? I don't think they charged that fee correctly. Or, hey, I need to do this kind of last minute transfer of funds, and so much is online today. I guess maybe you don't have to do that, but it saved my butt a couple times. So, what are some of the other professional relationships that you would recommend that people may want to nurture before they need them? Obviously, one that was from your thing is a locksmith, and so I'm sure you'll talk about that. But anything else come to mind?
That's an interesting question. I would say something that a lot of it's sort of the skilled trades, especially, and this depends if you're a renter, things like your electric, your plumbing. I mean, that's going to be a management company handling that, probably badly. We like to joke. Most places I've rented, they all have the same contractor that comes to fix things. It's ass and a half contracting. It's 3 guys that show up and all half-ass it and then leave. But if you own your own home, having an electrician that you know, having a plumber that you know, that will not charge you an arm and a leg, that they understand what you're going for. And those relationships are hard to, I mean, people almost protect them like a good barber. And you're like, oh man, my hairstylist, they went out of business. I don't know what I'm going to do. I've been going to them for 25 years. It's why you hope that people in a lot of the skilled trades, you're like, huh, you're getting on in years, Jerry. Is your daughter interested in taking over? Well, who you got coming in? Oh yeah, you still to make sure that continuation of service, right?
Yes.
Everybody though, at least because America is very car centric, everyone kind of drives a car. Having a good auto mechanic, having a good auto garage. Yes. This is almost like, again, we think of barbers, therapists, doctors as these unchanging relationships that you kind of have forever. Remember that the relationship should be serving you. And I know it's hard to go on like that new candidate search, but if you don't like your mechanic or your hairstylist or your therapist or your something else, it's okay for you to do the work of like, yeah, I know I've been going to this person for a few years. I just don't like, I'm going to try something else. And try to find someone with whom you really click. They're going to know a lot about your life and they're going to have a lot of control over how your day or your week goes when you really need them in the clutch. So if your car has a problem, that's not the time to be like, which garage isn't going to rip me off? Hopefully, like you said, you want to have the neighborhood, if you're lucky enough to have the neighborhood garage where you've been going for ages.
Yeah.
They know you. They'll fit you in. You know they're giving you a fair shake.
Yeah. Well, okay, so you left out the locksmith. Like, you're a locksmith. Like, why would I want to pre-establish a relationship with a locksmith?
Absolutely true. Locksmiths are particularly hard to search for, especially after hours. There's not too many, we'll say auto garages. I mentioned auto garages. There are not too many auto garages that are actually not. Locksmiths are a trade where they are advertised, like there'll be listings for locksmiths that are not really locksmiths. They are people that show up and they're going to try to get the door open if you're like a lockout service, but they're not really going to protect your property, your hardware. They're not going to do anything correct. They're going to cause damage. They're going to overcharge you. And then, like, yeah, so the door's open, but now you've got a whole different pile of problems. And that's it's a problem in many big cities, especially where locksmiths will sort of be a dispatch line, a phone line that's usually being answered by a call center out of state or even out of the country. And they'll send mobile technicians with very minimal training to people who are very vulnerable. Because what are you going to do? You've already been outside of your house, waiting your cold, probably 45 minutes, a guy shows up. And he says, yeah, I can get you in, but here, it's not the price you thought you were going to pay. And no, I won't give you a written estimate. And they're going to, well, do you have the money right now? Well, give me the money before I start drilling. And then they cause a bunch, now the door's open. And like, that's not what you would have wanted. But right. What are you going to do? Say, no, go back in your car. You person I'm talking to in the middle of the night alone out here with you who are much bigger than me. And I'm going to call, what are you going to call? The same dispatch line and get the same guy? Maybe hope that for a roll of the dice that it's not going to, there might be multiple, I'm going to call the next Yellow Pages ad. And it's actually the same company that has multiple 800 numbers. And you're going to talk to the same guy again. So yeah, finding a brick and mortar locksmith shop. And much like with lawyers, your everyday lawyer might not be the lawyer you need in that particular crisis. Your everyday brick and mortar locksmith, they might not be the ones who have a late night lockout service, but they're going to know. They say, oh yeah, for late night service on the west side of town, you want to call Phil and Jane. Phil and Jane, they're good people. We refer everyone to them. They're good. You've got some credence there. You've got some gravitas to that recommendation.
Yep. Okay, so what I have to imagine that when you're at a cocktail party or you're having some sort of social interaction with people, you just be like, oh, what do you do for a living? And you tell them. Mm-hmm. You've got to get like the same litany of questions all the time. So, and my audience must be having those questions too. So let's do a little bit of a lightning round. Tell me what locks are best for my home. Do I want master or slage or whatever? Padlocks, bike locks. I'm dying to know, are the little safes that are in hotel rooms, are they actually secure? I'm guessing these are questions you get all the time.
These are great. They're all great questions, and I'll try to be as brief as I can, even though the answer to many of them is it depends. for your home, like, again, no one likes to just be prescriptive and say, this is the right thing. I will say, every time I've had a home that I put a lock on, it's been a Schlage Primus. Primus is not Schlage's hardware store brand. It's a higher tier of professional lock. You're ordering it through a locksmith. But I like it for robustness and key control. I can give, the keys they're not impossible to copy. There are ways to copy a Primus key. I mean, nowadays 3D printing, but it raises the bar. If I give the key to a cat sitter because I'm out of town for this week and I say, hi, I've met you, I've hired you, I got a good recommendation because I didn't just pluck you out of the Yellow Pages. I sound so old. I'm saying Yellow Pages. Good Lord. Half your listeners must be like, okay, what? Boomer, what is wrong with you? I'm not that old. But if I give this key to a technician who has to come in and I say, all right, well, I'll be out when you're installing that new dishwasher, but the management office will have my key. I'm pretty sure that this technician can't just go around the corner, make a copy of my key in 5 minutes. I'm pretty sure that the person who's watching our cats can't just make a copy of that key with no effort. They would need special skill. So
you're not going to go to a little automated thing that the Home Depot, right?
It will not work. So that's why I've used Schlage Primus on almost all my doors. It's good enough for me there. I also have certain padlocks that because again, as a locksmith, I've been able to key them up. But $40, $50 in hardware, I can put together bike locks that will work with my Primus key or with a lower grade key that I might have clipped to my belt. And I don't care if that bounces out of my belt when I'm on a hike or a bike ride. Because, I have my house key too, but I know that if I lose that key, it's not the same as losing my house key. There's a lot you can talk about there. Yes, in general, Schlage's commercial line, anybody who has a commercial line of products, any of the brands in America, you don't have to go overseas. All my Asa Abloy friends will be like, recommend the Asa ProTech, the Abloy ProTech. No, you can buy a Sargent. Sargent is a brand in the USA. You can buy Yale. You can buy a commercial grade deadbolt and you're pretty happy. Padlocks. I love Greg out in California, Gregory Waugh, who runs Packlock. He doesn't pay me to say this. Packlock, they're a very proactive company. They are involved in the community. They've worked with professionals. They work with the lock picker and lock sport community to get feedback, and they're constantly improving their products. I love Pacific Lock. But again, I have an Abbas brand Schlage core padlock for all of my gun cases and all of my bikes and everything else. When I need a padlock, it's going to work with my same key, which is a Primus key on my front deadbolt. And yeah, the safe locks in hotels, the safes, it depends. Is it better than leaving your laptop sitting on the bed? Probably, I would say. But never forget that the safes in hotel rooms are designed not for your protection as much as for the establishment's protection. It is a transference of liability. So for the longest time, I used to know a lot of safe technicians that would service safe deposit boxes. And I just did an interview with the people down at a company called Bullseye. I'll put that out later. And they make a lot of safe deposit locks. And they've said that the market has changed so much. Nowadays, you really only see these in financial institutions, but they used to be everywhere. And I said, what do you mean? They said, well, every hotel that was one step up from a roadside motel, every hotel you've ever heard of had a nest of safe deposit boxes in the management office or behind the desk, because guests who had valuables, they would put it. That was what the house safe was. It was a nest of safe deposit boxes, and it meant that the front desk person was fiddling with a key. We had to give the renter's key and the guard key and manage those, and it was too much of a hassle. So let's just put a cheap little metal box in every room, because by law, hoteliers need to provide some way for you to lock your stuff up.
Really?
Otherwise, they can be liable for theft. But if they've given you something, it transfers that liability. In most jurisdictions, in most municipalities and states, it is on you to make use of the house safe. And if the house safe is a cheap piece of crap that's not even bolted down in the closet of your hotel room, well, that's your house safe, buddy.
And most of them now are the digital locks where you come up with a 4-digit PIN to open it. I assume there's got to be an emergency PIN that everybody at the hotel knows.
Many of them do have emergency override pins. Many times they're 6 digits, and we can talk about that. If you start entering digits, you enter them wrong, and you get past the 4th digit and it doesn't immediately error. Like if your code is 4747, but you go up to it, you try to unlock the safe, and you go 1, 2, 3, 4, and it goes instantly error. Well, all right, 4 digits. But if you go 1, 2, 3, 4, and it doesn't do anything, press 5. Press 6. okay, well, this safe is equipped to take a 6-digit code. That's probably the management code. And there are ways you could try dumb stuff. You could try all zeros, try,
Sure.
funny numbers, try the building zip code, whatever. But if you figure out the management code for the safe in your room, it's probably the override management code for all the safes in that building.
Right.
Maybe across all their properties. And there are ways we've done videos about extracting the management code out of a safe by using like a logic analyzer. There's a number of ways that you can do. It's called differential power analysis or side channel analysis, looking at the E squared C bus. There's a number of technical things, but yeah, extracting those master codes is something we've done as a proof of concept. And it's, if we haven't, that's a very old video. I think our friend in Texas wants to do a video with us about that. So look for that in a future video with Bobak and I.
All right. Well, the other thing I got to ask is, I imagine that most movies and TV shows get lock picking and safe cracking completely wrong. So let's just probably start there. Which ones get it right?
Really cool question. So movies and TV getting lock picking right or wrong? I wish my friend Night Owl was here to answer. Like, there's literally a list that he and a few other people have maintained over the years about movies that show. Let's start with even showing the correct tools, right? So sometimes lock picks look very interesting, but the turning tool, I mean, if anybody out there has done lock picking, you need a lock pick and a turning tool usually, and the turning tool is often just absent. Yeah.
Yep.
So things like, there was a very good movie, I loved it, Clive Owen and some other people, Inside Man, which is about a bank robbery and a hostage situation, but they're opening a safe deposit box with sort of cheap pin tumbler tools and just 2 of them, no turning tool, that kind of thing. So that's a little, you'd use a nose puller or something like that if you're curious in the safe deposit land. But things like, there was a movie, I think this was a De Niro picture, Midnight Run, where he plays a bounty hunter essentially. And he's using modern tools and even improvised tools that real people in the trades would have been using in that period in history. There was a Japanese show that Bobak, my friend, loved. He was flipping out. He said, wow, it was called Saru Lock or Monkey Lock. It was about a locksmith. It was sort of it was a live action show, but inspired by a manga. So in that sort of overwrought, big gestures, big expressions kind of style. But they showed real picking techniques and impressioning technique in a way that, like, somebody who was on their technical advisory team did a really great job. I think in a lot of TV and film, if they could at least mock up the lock with so the plug will turn, that would sell it for a lot more locksmiths. But you need the prop department to mock up a lock with, the actual tailpiece isn't attached, so you can easily spin it, but it makes for a good visual shot. And safe cracking, oh heavens, so many, as a safe technician, there's a lot of things wrong. There's a lot of great movies. I've never seen it, but I'm very aware of Jimmy Caan. He was in a movie just called Thief, where I've seen some of the drilling scenes from the safes. I mean, those are real rigs, those are real tools, real techniques. There's a real burning bar in one scene. So yeah, when movies want to get it right, it's really thrilling. But I think anybody with a specialized knowledge, I'm sure there's surgeons out there who say, I love when they really got that medical lingo right in that treatment room.
Yeah.
Right. Or a
Right.
car mechanic or a race car driver says, oh, look, he's actually shifting where you would shift during that part of the turn.
Yeah, I figured you must. If you find your buddy that's got that list, I'd be love to pass that on.
Oh, hell yeah.
That'd be good. Security researchers and trainers often get pushback from companies who don't want their products' vulnerabilities to be exposed, or even law enforcement, who sometimes views these disclosures or training things as how-to manuals for criminals. How do you respond when those concerns are raised for what you do? And is there a notion of there's a responsible disclosure when you're talking about software vulnerabilities? Is there a similar notion or code of conduct for physical penetration?
I would say yes. I would say that we can hearken way back to the annals of the internet and security culture in the digital realm. You or some listeners might remember, before we even had a CVE program and other things like that, there were mailing lists. There was the bug track mailing list. There was the full disclosure mailing list. And this is what the community had kind of cobbled together before vendors were working with us. Fyodor and other people were managing these mailing lists. And the community guideline was, you can post proof of you could say, hey, I found this problem. And if someone says, that's not real, are you sure? I think you must be mistaken. you can post proof of concept code. You'd be like, well, this is a snippet of code that I used, and I'm pretty sure that will deliver a payload exactly. I mean, this is exploit code that should work. But what you wouldn't do is post pre-compiled binaries of your exploit tools to the mailing list.
Mm-hmm.
So if somebody on the mailing list says, this version of IIS web server or something is vulnerable, interesting. If that person's a bad actor, they might look more critically at that software product, but they have to do the work to make the tools themselves. If somebody posts proof of concept code, they say, oh, look at that. They rub their hands together. I'm going to break into this website. They still have to know enough programming to compile the code, debug it, get it to run, and apply it to that target.
Right.
Versus handing somebody literally the equivalent of a loaded gun by posting, you click this exe file and it will own the website.
Right.
That would be considered irresponsible. So in the physical security world, talking about, hey, this access control technology has some bugs in it. That's just telling people, I would steer clear of this. There's some research that's been done that you might not know about, but it's vulnerable. Or someone says, hey, I don't believe you. Everyone uses that badge system. You're lying. You say, okay, well, crack your knuckles. And someone gets up on stage in a DEF CON talk or something, and they say, this is me showing you that it's working. I'm breaking this. I'll do it a live demo right here. Click, boop, the door goes green. The credential is the wrong credential. How did I encode the credential on this new badge? You're showing that it's real, but what you're not doing is saying, go to my website where you can buy this tool, pre-compiled, turnkey, ready to go. So selling a turnkey solution that somebody without knowledge of how it works could make it work, that gets into, I think, the line. That's the line that a lot of us draw. Which is why, I mean, I'm not trying to shill for anything here, but like my website, which I'm not comfortable mentioning it. You want to put it in the show notes, you put it in the show notes. But I have a physical entry tools website that I've been running for years, and all of our clients and customers buy a lot of gear from us. We have a restricted section. There are some items that are for either being technically impactful enough or simply just low-hanging fruit enough, like common keys that will open up panels, lock panels all over this country that are they're all keyed the freaking same. I know what the key is. We talk about it in our training classes. I'm not just going to sell it to you for $7. If you're a person who's like, yes, I have these credentials, I have these authority, and like you want to be part of our restricted section, I'll sell you to that because you're already I can do a background check on you. But it's irresponsible for me to say, yeah, here, anonymous customer who happened to have a credit card, here's a key that opens all these freaking panels that unlock door lobbies all around the country, no questions asked. I don't consider that to be appropriate.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, that's fascinating. Another question I wanted to ask is, you were talking about how you'd do a walkthrough of a business, somebody who invited you in and just to help you find things. But I mean, obviously at this point in your career, you must walk around buildings all the time and say, that's not good. Or you're running across the things that had they hired you, you would have been calling these things out and someone would be jotting things on a clipboard. So when you're not being paid to do this and you find these things, what do you see as your duty to warn these people about these things? And how do you deal with that situation?
Yeah. I think let's answer that with an analogy. If someone is a culinary professional, they're a chef, they're a line cook, they're something, it's probably hard for them to go to a restaurant and not notice things. They say, okay, so they're using, that's not the onion I would have used in this dish. There's way too much onion. And why is it a red onion? It's visually clashing. It's overpowering. I wouldn't have done that. Or they say, this place, I asked for the steak medium rare. This is clearly way too rare. This is blue practically. All right. I mean, most people overcook it, but okay, can you refire this? So you're talking with your date or your spouse or your colleagues. But if you're not noticing a condition that would be a risk of life and health safety, that's just going to be a conversation among friends. You say, I mean, all right, maybe we're not going to go to this place again. Their cocktail was a mud mix and they couldn't execute a salad, let alone a steak. But that's just a conversation with friends. If something is actually unsafe, or if it's going to ruin the business, that's when maybe that chef sends a letter to the owner and says, hey, you might not care, but I mean, as a small business owner myself, I think you need to be aware whoever your executive chef is doesn't check in on the line very often. They're really making a mess back there. Or if something is literally like, these eggs aren't cooked, And this happens every time I'm here, and you're a culinary, you're like, do I have to call the health department? Are you making people sick? You're going to one day. That's kind of the angle that I have for physical security. Every building has its off day. Every building has that one door that won't close, or that thing in this system. But look at that camera this is an old, outdated badge system. If it's not immediately going to be risk of life and limb, I'm going to keep it to myself. Or if I have a good enough relationship with the facility, I might say, hey, man, do you guys ever upgrade these keys? Because the key you gave me, come on, what are you doing here? But if I'm in a hospital and I notice their records room is literally never locked, and I'm just walking, I'm like, what? There's no effing staff. If I'm in, you name it, a school, and the school like literally has side doors that there's bricks every time I drive by or drop my kid off at school, I'm like, these side doors are not supposed to be propped effing open. I might report it to the school board, or, might report it to my local city councilor or something, because the risk is so grave. And I've done that occasionally with fire exits. Every building has a few things that aren't to code. Hey, come on, you really should. This door is you shouldn't have this door blocked. You can't use the fire exit. I understand it's a dance floor, but you can't have these chairs can't be in front of that door. Move these chairs. Come on, guys. In that very DIY direct action, like, hey, what if we just moved our table 6 feet that way? Like, watch them stop us. This shouldn't be blocking this door. But I've been in buildings where I'm like, you are padlocking the back doors. These can't be locked during occupancy. I understand you might have a padlock overnight. You can't padlock. So I've reached out to the local AHJ and I said, hey, this restaurant, I've told the manager several times, they got to have these padlocks off the doors during occupancy, and they're not doing it. And then a few months later, suddenly there aren't any padlocks on those doors.
Yeah. All right. Most of our lives are completely digitized today. We've become completely dependent on our devices and the internet to access crucial information, things that would have been printed on paper before. So what sorts of info should we be maintaining physical copies of? And then do you have any tips on maybe how we might organize this for like emergency access?
Yeah. And I'll have to don't do what I say I've done. This is just telling me what I do. But a lot of people say, yep, sounds good enough for me. I'm going to copy that word for word. So I will say, in a disaster, what you want to make sure you can prove is who you are and your connection and interaction with loved ones, immediate loved ones. So having hard copies of your identity documents. That includes the ones that you think you'll never lose, like my passport, my license, that might be in my pocket. I still have scans of them. I have digital scans of them. Or the documents that I don't carry around every day, like my birth certificate, my marriage certificate, things like that.
Yeah.
But I have more copies of them. This is sort of, again, why spend the extra money later when you could spend less now? Whenever you're getting copies of anything like that, especially birth certificates and things, I always pay it's $5 extra for an extra one. Get an extra one. You might not need it for the thing you're doing right now, but that goes in the drawer. Or it goes to the drawer in your friend's house. So important life documents. And the other ones we spoke of, where you have a conversation with a lawyer and you have the durable power of attorney, medical power of attorney, wills, which people, it's sounded like a Hollywood trope. We have to get into Uncle so-and-so's safe and get the hard copy with the wax seal. You can have the digital copy of these things. Like, it's not like a hospital is going to accuse you of making up a fake document. If you have a digital PDF that you both signed, you scanned, you're like, yeah, it's not the wet ink signature original, but like, this is my spouse or my boyfriend or my girlfriend. Like, I'm making their medical decisions. Because you made it, and there's probably an attorney's name on that document too. They can call their law office and say, this is real, right? So yeah, we worked on that for them.
Right.
So having hard copies, even if they're just photocopies of those documents, also very good. Anything where you need to be in control and exercise agency over your life or the immediate lives of your immediate family members. And those don't have to be the one canonical copy. People say, I need what's the best fire safe I can ever have? I'm really worried about losing. Do I have to spend $10,000 on this big vault room and a safe room in my house? And I said, no, get a fire safe in your house for $250 and get a fire safe in the house of a friend or a loved one who lives on the other side of the country. Say, I'll pay for it. Can I put this in your back bedroom closet? And they say, what are you going to put in there? You say, a bunch of papers. and have the copies of those papers.
Yeah.
And also, when you're doing this, because you're scanning things in and making copies, put it all digitally on a flash drive as well. And that flash, when you tell your friend across the country, oh my God, I live in California, there was a wildfire, all my shit's gone. Your friend doesn't have to like FedEx a bunch of papers. Your friend across the country says, yep, I opened the safe. I've got the flash drive. What's the decryption key? Okay, I'm going to put all those PDFs in a Google Drive for you right away. There you go. So yeah, those kind of documents. I don't keep there's documents we keep that we're supposed to keep. I got to keep my tax records for at least 5 years, whatever the hell it is.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't really care. The government's not coming to ask for my tax records after a national disaster. I have one copy. I keep it around for as long as I'm supposed to, and then I throw it the hell out.
Yep. Sadly, there's a lot more political unrest these days. It seems to be anyway. Maybe it's just because it's getting closer to home. But should we be proactively minimizing our public digital footprint? Do you have any specific advice for maybe somebody attending a protest, for example?
Yeah, there's kind of a reverse bell curve on this one, where the importance of protecting yourself, how anonymous do you want to be, where there is either you're such a very public person because you're like, well, I don't do anything. I'm just a kid on the internet. I don't do anything political, which I still caution people about. I'm very privileged to be Gen X, and I grew up. There's no digital signature of me when I was young and dumb. It just didn't exist.
Right.
We're the last generation that's kind of like that. But if you start becoming more politically active or more focused on community care, mutual aid, other projects, maybe you're with a network of people that make sure you don't have enough ammo in your house. I've got extra ammo. I've got extra magazines. Well, I don't know. Are they 30-round magazines? Are you supposed to be sharing that? I wouldn't do that if I were you. Talk to a lawyer. Maybe you're sharing HRT. Maybe you're driving somebody out of state because they need a medical procedure. As you start to become more politically active, deeply reducing how public facing that is very important. As you get, if you're a person who's literally out there, this is for narrative purposes. I am not condoning lighting Teslas on fire, but like if you're firebombing Cybertrucks, you obviously should be very mindful of how you should not be talking about. Don't post about your crimes. But then there's an upswing where you say, I'm going to be so committed to a movement that I'm going to talk exclusively about women's rights, trans rights, black rights, where being public. I know many very prominent trans folk, many of whom are literally politicians. So when my friend Erin and her wife Zoe, like when they are out in public, they're not minimizing their signature. They're not trying to hide that they are trans and go to use a bathroom. Like they are protected by how public they are. They're both very public figures at that point. And there's a certain bit of privilege there. If you don't have that privilege, you are not operating there. You're operating in the, I need to minimize what I can get tagged with and get hurt by mindset, or you should be, in my opinion. And yes, going to protests, if you are potentially in a situation, no one goes, I think, to a protest saying, I am definitely going to punch somebody in the face today 6 feet away from officers that want to arrest me.
Right.
But if you are going to a protest that might have counter-protests, it might turn violent, you might have to engage in defensive action. If there are people that attack you, and then did they see, they had a knife? No, I didn't see if they had a knife. Who knows? You don't want, there is surveillance technology everywhere. There are cops everywhere with cameras. Going there in a way that minimizes how easily you can be identified if you have to get out of a bad situation. You want to leave that bad situation behind. You safely get out of there, get with your people, get back to a car, get gone. You don't want to have a video popping up online that some asshole shot. He's like, look, I'm not going to film my friend pepper spraying you. I'm just going to film, look at this person in the bright pink whatever with this logo, and they're wearing this hat with this, their company they work for is on the hat. Look at them punching my innocent friend. All he did was tell them that their whole life is invalid and they should be murdered, and he's just punching him. I thought free speech meant something in this country. You don't want to be identifiable if there's a chance that you're going to get swept up in a situation that gets out of control.
So maybe related to that, I've been trying to convince people through this podcast and also every chance I get, basically, to migrate to secure and private communications for years, and with limited success. But maybe it's always good to hear some other people's perspectives on that, and maybe a different selling point. So why should my audience use Signal and Proton, and how do they, if they're already convinced, how do they get their friends and family to join them?
Well, come on now. If it's good enough for a drunk Secretary of Defense, it's good enough for you. But yeah, Signal. I'll put it this way again. A lot of people, I have nothing to hide. My life is boring. Your neighbor's life isn't. Your sister and your brother's life, they might have something to. Maybe they are actually dealing with a very private medical concern. If you live in a society where 99% of people are just texting in the clear, and one person is on Signal, that puts a magnifying glass over that person.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be someone you care about. I want to live in a society where 99% of people are on Signal, including all the boring ones. Because the state has a much harder time, as other nation states have tried to do. Other nation states have tried to say, why are you using, back before it was Signal, it was called Red Phone. And other services, there was Tiger Text and Wire. These are early days of sort of everybody democratized encryption and communications. You would be prosecuted in other countries. Syria did it. China took a very dim view. And if all the citizens are doing it, it becomes like prohibition on alcohol. It becomes unenforceable because everyone's using Signal. So if not for you, for your neighbors and loved ones and your family members, you should be using Signal.
We need to normalize privacy and end-to-end encryption.
Yes. Not for the day that you think you'll never need it. It's for the day you think you'll never need it. You don't have to have the passport because you say, I'm definitely going to have to flee the country. That's why I'm getting. No, you have the passport for the day you hope never comes. You hope you don't have a relative in distress or that you're not being stalked by somebody who's a crazy lunatic and you're like, I got to get out of my house and possibly the country. You have the passport for the day you hope never comes. Maybe you're using encryption for the day you hope never comes. I have plenty of things in my life that for other people's lives could be leveraged against them, but I'm very public about that. We talked about I'm just very public about who I am. So that comes with some privilege. But if I am helping somebody who's anguishing over a medical decision that might be illegal in their home state, and I want to talk to them and counsel them, a loved one about it, I don't want that to be the first time I'm trying to convince them how to use Signal or get them to understand how Signal gets set up. I want to have a conversation. It's just like I don't want the authorities to ever take their phone and to say, well, you've been texting this person every day for 5 years. Then the moment you text them with this medical concern, your text messages stop. Why was that? Well, we started using Signal. Really? In conjecture, says the prosecutor.
Yep, absolutely. It should be the norm. And the more we all do it, the better we'll all off be. And you definitely want to have this thing set up and ready to go before you need it, like all these other things we've been talking about today. So, yes, absolutely. All right, so Deviant, what's next for you? Do you have any more cool talks planned? What's coming up?
I do. I always say, "Poof, that last one was huge. I got to take a break for a while." But then I get something kind of sticks on me, and I start building a talk. So I gave a talk in D.C. at the final ShmooCon conference. All of us who went there will miss ShmooCon very much. It was very special for these 20 years. I spoke at the very first ShmooCon, and I got to speak at the very last one, and many in between. Cool. But it was about safes and vaults and classified document storage, particularly during the Cold War up to now, and things that adversaries have done that were never really public and never really proven. And some of them involve radiation and other. Basically, thanks to some investigative journalism overseas and some documents that have become unsealed, and then me going to a nuclear reactor and testing some things, I have recreated some very clandestine attacks against safes and vaults that were only rumored to have ever existed. And that I'm giving that talk again in a much bigger and better form with new additions. I'm giving that in North Carolina in less than a month at KakalakiCon.
Yeah.
So I'll be there. It's one of my, now that ShmooCon's gone, that people say, where's the small, really, really intimate hacker conference I can go? You can go to SaintCon out in Utah, and you can go to KakalakiCon in North Carolina. So that's huge. That'll be in mid-May. I don't know when this will be broadcast, but if it still hasn't happened, get yourself down to Raleigh-Durham.
I'll be talking about it regardless. That's one of my favorites too, and that's maybe where I first actually saw you. I don't think we met, but I saw you, I think, at one of the Kakalaki-cons. It's a great conference.
I love it. I'll be at DEF CON and Black Hat. I'm always at DEF CON and Black Hat. Been going there for, 20 plus years, 25 years now. We always have our training at Black Cat. So, I don't like to mention my tools and equipment website. I resist ever saying, we call it Blue Group Gadgets because it's not the name of the company, but you could, you'll, whatever. People get, some of the comments will say it, but Red Team Alliance is our professional training arm. And I'm very proud, publicly proud of the work we're doing there. There really are a lot of companies that who have hired us to break in. And they often say, yeah, well, we were trying to bid this job and we talked to you at our company. The consulting firm is the core group. They say, oh yeah, well, we talked to everyone else we talked to either said, just hire the core group, or they said, well, yeah, you've heard of their training company, Red Team Alliance. They're the ones who trained us anyway. You might just want to hire them. So yeah, we train people in covert entry and everything from mechanical locks, safes, access controls, alarm systems, everything electronic and in between. Yeah, I love what we're doing. We have a facility in Vegas. We have a facility in a classroom center in Virginia. That's the legacy that I'm very proud to leave behind, is all of the educational materials, only a sliver of which show up on my YouTube channel. The multi-day classes are really in depth, and we've never had someone come away saying, oh, that was a bad time. I wasn't happy with this education. I want more people learning this and spreading the knowledge to others.
Well, that's fantastic. I'll definitely put links to that in the show notes. And it's been looking forward to talking to you in a long time. So I'm so glad we finally got you on the show. Thanks for coming on, Deviant.
This was wonderful. Thank you for having me on.
Wasn't that just fascinating? I mean, that was just a really interesting discussion. And again, a lot of that's because Deviant's a really interesting person. So I'm so glad I got him on the show. I would hope I can bring him back in the future. We'll talk about other things. He's done a lot of other great talks, hacker talks. In the show notes, I have linked to his website as well as, to his original one that inspired me to want to invite him on the show, his talk entitled Lawyer, Passport, Locksmith, Gun. If you found this discussion interesting, you definitely need to go watch that video. I've included some links to some of the products he mentioned as well in the show notes if you want to look those up, like PackLock and the Schlage Primus lock. And there was another really interesting discussion that he just recently did at KakalakiCon, which unfortunately I missed because I was doing an Alaska cruise, which, if you're going to miss it, that was a good reason not to be there. But thankfully, he recorded it and posted it. Now, it's almost 2 hours long, and you could take it in chunks. But it's really, really super interesting. Like, he took some of his own personal knowledge and knowledge from people that he knows in the industry that have been in the industry for literally decades, and a book that was recently published that declassified a lot of really interesting Cold War stuff about safe cracking, in particular in things like embassies and highly sensitive information over the years. And some of the crazy features that were built into safes over the years to try to prevent cracking. And along the way, you'll learn how safes work and how the locks on the safe works with the tumbler. And in all the movies where you see people with the stethoscope trying to, get into a safe, is that for real? Is that really how that works? I thought it was fascinating. So there's a link to that in the show notes as well. I do want to mention one other thing that the Deviant briefly mentioned, and that was... He made a reference to keeping your mouth shut if you're ever arrested. That is a real thing. And it's honestly very sound legal advice. I mean, ask your lawyer because, hey, you have one, right? Maybe after this talk you will. But I put in the show notes, there's kind of a classic public service announcement, a PSA from the National Lawyers Guild that's called Shut the F Up. And of course, they don't say F. It is absolutely not safe for work because of that. So, don't do this in a place where someone can hear you and you don't want them to be hearing a lot of cursing. But it's really funny, it's really clever, and quite frankly, it's good advice. So it's not that long. There's a link in the show notes. I recommend you check that out as well. All right, so patrons on Thursday will get bonus content from Deviant. I had some more questions for him. We talk about how skeleton keys work. I kind of get into some of the details, like how does it work when some company asks you to break into their place? Like, do you have a get out of jail free card that you keep on you at all times? Does it seem kind of like a heist movie? Turns out, spoiler, that it kind of does. We talk a little bit about his OPSEC or operational security tips for when going through a border, including the U.S. border. We even talk about why you might want a second passport. And I don't mean a copy of your first one. I mean a passport for a different country. So even more interesting discussion with Deviant, and that will come to the patrons as usual on Thursday morning. All right, that's going to do it for this week, everybody. We'll have a new show for you next week as normal. And take care out there, stay safe, and until next week, as always, don't get caught with your drawbridge down.